Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this, what I believe is our fourth RPSC Club Leaders Zoom meeting. We're extremely glad to have Tim Aston with us tonight, who's the president of the Ottawa Philatelic Society, and he's going to be talking to us about some of the outreach activities that they've done. And I know it's going to be an exciting program. As always, we'll post this on the RPSC YouTube channel so that others can watch it as we go along. And feel free. Tim, would you like people to ask questions as they come up?
Basically, my presentation is in two parts. Maybe if they have questions about the first part, we could do any questions then, and then we could do the second part.
Fantastic.
Do it that way.
Okay, that's great. That's perfect. Okay, well, let's go ahead and we'll share our screen now. And be good to go. Okay. Take it away, Tim, and thank you.
Okay. I'd like to say thank you very much, everybody, for attending. This is fantastic. And what I'd like to do is, Greg, if you'd like, I'll just say next when I want to go to the next slide.
Sure.
Okay, so if you could go to the next slide, please. Basically, my presentation is going to be in two parts. The first part is who we are, i.e. who the Ottawa Philatelic Society is. And the second part is going to be a sort of an overview of the type of outreach activities that we have either undertaken or we are currently undertaking. So next. Okay, next. Okay, the Ottawa Philatelic Society was established in 1891 with a goal to promote the subject of philately in with both its members and the public in general. We currently have approximately 100 members. We meet weekly on Thursday evenings between September and June, and the society is closed during July and August. On any particular club night, we have around 30 members in attendance, and our annual membership fee is $35 a year. Next, please. Okay, so who are our members? Basically, our membership is predominantly male with an average age between 65 and 75. We have a strong female component of members. About 10% of our total membership is female. We have a strong Francophone component. We are ethnically diverse, but not very. And our members come from a very diverse set of life backgrounds. So the next question is, why do our members actually attend the club? So if we could go to the next slide, please. Basically, this is a Venn diagram. And if we look at the blue circle, we have members, and basically they're there to buy, sell, and trade stamps. We have some hardcore sellers. We have some hardcore traders. If we go to the gray circle, and this is where the bulk of our members actually sit, is they're basically knowledge seekers. They want to increase their knowledge about their collections. They want to increase their knowledge about philately in general. And then the third type of member that we have is they're there for the social aspects of the club. They like to go there. They like to talk to their friends, whether it's about stamps or other things. They don't mind. But for some of them, it's their big night out. So if we go to the next slide, please. What type of activities do we offer our members? Well, they have access to our library. We have the same room at the site. We're in a community center, and we have a couple of storage areas and a cupboard where we can keep library books. And most importantly, we have 2 copies of the most recent Scots catalogs. Every year we buy a brand new set along with the unit rate. So members can always access the most up-to-date catalogs. We hold auction nights 5 or 6 times a year. We have 4 philatelic study groups, each with a group leader, a Canada, a US, a Topicals, and a Great Britain and Commonwealth. Basically, the Canada and US study groups, they're basically our bread and butter. Most of our members, probably 80% of them, collect either Canada, and or the US. We offer workshops and presentations, and basically the study group leaders are the ones that organize the presentations and workshops on a rotating basis. We promote and encourage philatelic exhibiting. We have a garage sale event once a year in the late fall. We offer something called the Stamp Professor Initiative, and I'll mention that later on. And we hold potluck suppers twice a year, usually in May and December. If we go to the next slide, please. And this is what a typical club night activity would look like. Basically, activities start around 5:30. Between 5:30 and 7, it's completely unstructured meeting activities. We have people that buy, sell, trade. They congregate in groups and talk. They talk with their friends. They use the library. It's completely unstructured. Around about 7 o'clock, we have a short business session and some announcements. And then around about 10 after 7, the membership splits into two main activities. The members either continue as they did beforehand, or they break out into a separate room and attend a presentation or workshop. And usually around about 8:15, activities are finished and everything's over. The next slide, please. We offer, for the last 2 years, about 2 years ago, we started something called the Stamp Professor Initiative. And this is where one of our members provides a one-on-one forum for collectors of all levels, from beginner to advanced, to ask basic questions and or discuss topics related to stamps and philatelic materials in general. Any country, any topic. And it's really aimed at the beginner or the new members who might have very basic questions, but basically are intimidated or feel overwhelmed by basically the existing cliques of members, and also the level at which they're communicating between each other. An important thing to note there, hang on a second, the important thing to note here is that the Stamp Professor does not do evaluations, and they don't do the expertization of philatelic materials. So if we go to the next one, basically, there are 3 other clubs in the National Capital Region, the RA Stamp Club, the Amicale des Philatelistes de l'Outaouais, which is the APO, and also the Perth Stamp Club. We have a number of members who are also members of the RA Club, and we've also poached a number of RA Club members recently. And we also have between 5 and 10 members from the APO who are also members of our own club. The Perth Stamp Club is small and sort of semi-active, and I'm afraid I don't know very much about it. So if we go to the next slide, that's basically the first part of my presentation. It gives you an idea of what it is we are and what we do. And it's really important to understand. Yes?
How many members did you say the Ottawa Philatelic Society has?
We have about 100 fee-paying members.
Wow, great.
And some of them we never see.
Yeah, sure.
They just renew their membership every year. But on average, we get around 30 every night that we meet, which is actually a pretty good turnout. And it's sort of been climbing over the past year or so. And I think it's really important to understand how this functions, because how that functions really feeds into the type of outreach activities that we can actually do.
Mm-hmm. So sorry, Tim, did you say that the numbers attending are inclining or declining? I missed that.
Inclining. They are increasing. The actual in attendance numbers are actually increasing, which is actually really good. So if we go to the...
Can I ask one other question before you go on, just because we're interested in this on the national level? What percentage of the people who are in your club or come to your meetings regularly participate in the study groups?
If we have about 30 people every night, every meeting, about between 10 and 15 will participate in the study group workshops and meetings. Sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less.
Yeah.
So if you say around, on average, around 50 or 60%, that would be a pretty fair number. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on. Okay, the goal of the outreach activities, but certainly at the local community level, is basically to promote the hobby of stamp collecting and philately to both our own members. Hang on a minute. To both our own members and the public in general. And basically, our initiatives can be broken down into three different types. Activities that take place at the RPSC national level show. We do some web-based activities, and we also respond to ad hoc outreach requests. So if we move to the next slide, and then the next one, which is the RPSC Youth Booth Initiative. This is a long-running annual commitment to RPSC by the OPS. And basically, the objectives are to introduce and promote stamp collecting, covers, and postcard collecting to youth, encourage and assist young collectors in the pursuit of the hobby, and provide practical information to parents and guardians to assist their child in the hobby. And basically, at the RPSC show, the setup consists of 2 or 3 tables staffed by a number of bilingual volunteers who will provide a goodie bag to each child under the age of 18 who visits the booth. And the goodie bag includes a packet of stamps, a philatelic newspaper or magazine, very often some covers, and a stock book, packets of hinges, a pair of tongs, and a magnifier may also be provided. The volunteers also offer collecting tips, ideas, and assistance to the young collectors and their parents. And the youth booth also offers young collectors an opportunity to root through donated kiloware to find stamps that they need. And this is really popular since it provides some hands-on activity for them. This initiative has been running for about 10 or 15, or probably over 15 years. It seems to be very popular. Last year at the 2023 RPSC show, we had 31 children attend the booth over 2 days with parents in tow. The year before, I think we only had around 20. And then we had COVID, and before that, I really wasn't around. So there's a lot of enthusiasm in the club for this particular activity. It works. It gets, it provides an interface for youth and our members to meet. And as far as I'm concerned, we will continue to run it for as long as there are volunteers to run it. If we move on to the next slide, please. Okay, web-based activities. If we go to the next slide, this is a screenshot of the front page of our website. And if you have a look at the top, there's a row of tabs in that sort of gray area. And the very final one is a tab called Contact Us. If you go down the tabs on the left-hand side, the third from the bottom is what to do when you inherit stamps. We get, on average, 2 or 3 contact emails a week through this site. And the vast majority of them are basically questions. I have a collection, what can I do with it? You know, and about 2 or 3 years ago, we created this tab, what to do when you inherit stamps. And if we go to the next slide, if you press on that tab, you are then sent to a document which is called What to Do When You Inherit Stamps. And it's actually an article that is written by Bob Ingram from the British Columbia Philatelic Society. We approached Bob about 3 years ago to seek his permission to put this on our website. He was very enthusiastic. And while this document is specifically aimed at people who inherit stamps, it also contains a lot of useful information for people who may be in the process of downsiding or deciding what to do with a collection. I've had discussions with a number of dealers in the Ottawa area, And I've made them aware of our website. I've made them aware of this particular document. In some cases, I've actually given them paper copies of this document. They're happy to know that it exists. And we're quite happy as a club if they want to point people in the direction of this document. If we go to the next slide, when I get a question, over the last 6 months or so as president, I've developed what essentially amounts to a number of what I call templates of how to respond to the questions that we get in. And basically, I tell people that the Ottawa Philatelic Society does not purchase or undertake the evaluation of collections or the exploitation of material. However, what I do tell them is that we can offer to take a look at your collection and tell you what you may have or you may not have and what options you may wish to consider. It's my position that we never tell people what to do. We provide them with a list of options and it's up to them to decide. That said, we will accept donations of philatelic material. And if we receive donations, once the nature of the material has been assessed, we'll either use it to raise funds for our club activities and the promotion of stamp collecting, or it'll get broken down and used to prepare packages of stamps and other philatelic materials that are then donated, i.e. to the youth booth or to other outreach activities. And in the last 2 or 3 months, we've also, I've been establishing contact with Oxfam Canada because they have a very active program for dealing with donations of stamps. And out of all the charities that I've come across, they seem to be the best organized. So we can talk about that a little bit more. If we go to the next slide, please. And this is where it's probably the most interesting part of the talk is in the last 6 months, we've responded to a number of ad hoc outreach requests. So if we go to the next one. Okay, the first of these. In October 2023, which is about 6 months ago, we received a request for help with an upcoming stamp teaching initiative for grade 2 students at an Ottawa school. We were asked to prepare 130 packets of stamps, each containing 30 stamps, suitable for grade 2 students, and they needed to be delivered to the teacher by early December. And we duly did that. In the process, I had some contact. Actually, the teacher, to be fair, the teacher is the wife of one of our members. And I asked our member if his wife would actually, once this initiative has been completed, to come in and talk to us about what actually they did. Unfortunately, due to a set of circumstances beyond everybody's control, I haven't actually heard what happened. However, I'm continuing to work on this because I would really like to get some feedback on this. Exactly what did they do? How did the kids react to the exercise? How did they react to being given stamps? And what would be useful information to consider if we ever received another similar request? So that's one of the things that's come across the table. If we go to the next slide. In late January of this year, 3 members of the OPS attended a lunchtime meeting at the Abbotsford Community Support Center, which basically runs local activities for seniors, including organizing lunchtime talks. And I was one of the people that attended. And basically, we gave 2 presentations. One was called Stamp Collecting Past and Future. And the second was called the Ottawa Philatelic Society, Who We Are and What We Do. And what was the result? Well, we had a good turnout in terms of audience. We had around 20 seniors in attendance. After the presentations, we had lots of questions. We also received some donations of philatelic material to support our activities. Whether it leads to any new members or other future activities, I really don't know, but it was a great opportunity. Everybody who participated certainly appreciated the activity. And we are keeping our eyes open for other opportunities to talk to other, particularly seniors groups. And one of the things I'm going to talk about later on is a lot of these things feed back into one another. If we then go to the next slide, and this is probably the most interesting one. In late October, we were approached by the Kanata Theatre Group and also one of the actors, Tom Kobolak, to assist with props as well as coaching on philatelic terms and staging regarding the stamp dealer's shop for their upcoming production of the play Mauritius. I'll show you a photo in the next slide, but not yet. And basically, for those of you who are not aware of the play, it was written about almost 20 years ago, and it's about two sisters who inherit a stamp album from their grandfather. And inside the album, there's 2 copies of the 1847 Mauritius Post Office issue. And they have very different opinions on what to do with the album and the stamps. So February the 11th, I attended a Sunday afternoon matinee performance of Mauritius and subsequently participated in a post-performance talkback session with audience members called Stamp Collecting and Philately. The Sunday matinee was performed to a very enthusiastic audience and an almost a full house. After the play had finished, around 30 audience members stayed on for what turned out to be a 1 hour plus interactive talkback session, and questions and the resulting discussions ranged across a wide variety of topics, including the scarcity and fakes and forgeries of the 1847 Mauritius Post Office issues. I had to do my homework on that one. Depiction of discussions about the depiction of the stamp dealer in the play compared to real life stamp dealers, the popularity of stamp collecting, past and present, why people collect stamps, and how they perceive their collections. If we go to the next slide, this shows the participants in the talkback session. And in the background, you can see the stage representation of the stamp dealer's shop.
Wow.
And basically, there were 5 people up on the stage there. On the far left is Tom Kobolak, and he's the actor who played the stamp dealer. Next is Alain Shamsi, who's chair of the board of directors of the Gladstone Theatre Group, and he's a very keen philatelist. In the middle there, you have Julie Heaney, who was the play director. Next comes Tony Walker, who is head of the set design and construction unit, and he's also a member of the Auto Philatelic Society. And then there's myself. And one of the things we're going to talk about in a few minutes is how these things feed back on themselves. If we go to the next slide, I'd like to take just a few minutes to talk about the timeline of events, about how that Mauritius production scenario unfolded. In mid-October of last year, it started off with a very simple request is, can you help us out with some prop materials? Do you have any old Scott catalogs that you can provide for the shelves? Maybe some old albums, maybe some packages of stamps, etc., etc. And then towards about a couple of weeks later, the actor who was playing the stamp dealer approached the OPS through the website contact site. And he subsequently came along and he met with the stamp professor about 3 or 4 times in late October and early December. And we spent a lot of time talking about why people collect stamps, how they view stamps, what stamp dealers do. And we talked a lot about why in terms of the script, the stamp dealer was doing particular things. And this then sort of over Christmas period, everything went quiet. And then in mid-January, I had an email from the director asking me if I'd like to go down and meet with the cast and have a look at the staging details. And so I went down there on a Saturday afternoon and spent about an hour looking at the set and talking with the actors about what is the passion associated with stamps and stamp collecting. The director also asked if we'd be interested in participating in a matinee post-performance talkback session. In late January, there was an article appeared in a local newspaper, and the OPS was mentioned in that article. And subsequently, in sort of mid-February, we participated in the post-talkback session. And the really important thing about this is it all started with a simple request. But the real key thing here is when the actor approached us, we responded. He was invited to attend the club meeting and sit down and talk to members, and he was introduced to people. And I think he realized that here were some people who were going to help him get into the part. And if we hadn't demonstrated that enthusiasm at that particular time, none of these other things would have happened. So basically what I'm saying here is when opportunities arise, build on them. So if we go to the next slide, what type of lessons have we learned from the activities that I've discussed? Firstly, learn from previous experience. Listen to what your members are telling you, your clientele or your audience is telling you. What worked in the past may not necessarily work in the present or in the future. And certainly know what your capabilities are, because you can spend an awful lot of time wasting time. I've got a next term here which is basically generate enthusiasm, act on enthusiasm, and work with enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is infectious, and you can do a lot with enthusiasm. Seize the opportunities when they occur, and don't spend a lot of time looking for opportunities. About 15 or 20 years ago, we had a couple of members within the club who were school teachers, and there was a lot of activity that those members had access to schools and basically worked with schools to try and develop interest in philately with school children. They subsequently left and moved on. There was then a sort of quiet period, and we then had some people who wanted to try and do the same thing. And basically, the whole thing was a complete disaster, to the point where we still get sniping between certain members over those activities. And so that's why I'm sort of emphasizing you really need to learn from your previous experience when you're doing outreach. For example, the grade 2 initiative came from one of our members. The presentation to the seniors club came from one of our members. Okay, if we go to the next slide, I'm put up here a couple of what I call final take-home messages. The first one is attracting new members is important, but you also need to retain your existing members. And the question is why? Well, basically your members are your volunteers for your outreach activities. They're also your eyes and ears for potential opportunities. For me as president, I can't be everywhere. But if I have 30 members out there keeping their eyes open for opportunities to provide outreach, and they are then feed it back to me, and they know that I'm enthusiastic, things can happen. And if you keep your club vibrant, it's really important, because a vibrant club generates enthusiasm. And with enthusiastic members, as I mentioned before, you can get things done. Finally, and I keep coming back to this, when an opportunity presents itself, run with it, providing you have the capabilities. And finally, it's really important to acknowledge the work done by your members because they're really the people that make things happen. So I think that's everything I have to say in terms of the presentation. So if people have questions, I am more than happy to answer them.
Well, thank you for a really, really wonderful presentation. I'm following your thanking volunteers for doing things. I'd like to make sure that we do that. A lot of really insightful ideas, and I think the thing that I take away from it is that your club is not insular in the sense that they exist for each other, but that you actually get out into the community. And it's one of the things that we're learning in the RPSC, which is that it's fine to attract new members, but it's better to grow the hobby. And it sounds like you have a really healthy blend of both of those things. And I think that probably has a great deal to do with your success as a club. And so thank you for that on behalf of all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to respond to that. It sounds easy in the presentation. It's not necessarily easy to put into practice. There are, to be quite honest, members within the club that want to remain. We're a stamp club. We meet every Thursday evening, and we want to deal with our stamps. And why are we doing these other things? And sometimes you just have to push the envelope. I think part of this is probably my background. I spent 10 years working with a small nonprofit, and we didn't have a communications budget. And so when we did things, we had to try and make sure we got the maximum bang for the buck. And I think some of that is, I'm sort of using some of that knowledge and experience to sort of push things forward. Because the reality is, most of our members are probably 70 or over. So we need to continue to attract new members. And in my experience, if we have an active club and people like going to it, which they seem to, they're going to tell their friends. And when they come across somebody who's interested in stamps, there's going to be, an enthusiasm to attend. We sometimes get people, they come along for a couple of meetings and we never see them again. But we are trying to provide opportunities, for example, like the Stamp Professor initiative, so that new members can actually sit down and talk about, how do I measure perforations? What's a watermark? How do I use a Scots catalog? Basic things like that. And I find that, in some cases, particularly with the newer female members, they like to be able to sit down and ask those basic questions.
Yeah, I think it's really important to sort of provide an opportunity or a place where people can ask, what to them might feel like a dumb question. And it's really important to make sure they know it's safe to ask them. And I like the idea of setting up some kind of stamp beginner mentoring kind of program. The other challenge that I was a little bit concerned about as we started to shift our club here in Victoria was that, many of our members historically have been, very serious philatelists, not just stamp collectors, but writing articles in many journals, serious exhibitions, etc. And, over time, the numbers of those people are, diminishing just for a variety of reasons. And there's a new crop of collectors coming along who aren't necessarily as interested in some of those old serious topics. And I was a little bit worried about losing the attention and the interest of the older serious members when we had to kind of adjust our programming a little bit to try to be relevant to a younger, less knowledgeable kind of collector. But I'm very pleased to say that, most of our older members have been very supportive of this. They see I guess they see the writing on the wall, and there's been a lot of support from those members all the way around. So we've been very fortunate that way.
Yeah, no, that's you raise a really good point. We have the same issue. We have some members that we haven't seen them for probably 1 or 2 years now, since COVID, because they are, inverted commas, really old-fashioned serious collectors, and I don't think they like the way that the club is evolving. And my position is, when you go there on Thursday evening and we're getting 30 people or so, 30 people plus attending every week with the activities that we're offering, you know, that's what's attracting the people. That's what the newer members want.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I try and build something in for the I guess what I call the more specialist collectors, but it's difficult. It's very difficult. It's definitely an issue that we are wrestling with, but the number of serious collectors now is very small compared to the rest of the size of the club.
We had a meeting last week. We're very fortunate here in Victoria to have a close relationship with at least 3 quite strong local dealers, and we've been working on ways of cooperating with them on the production, I'll call it, of 4 stamp fairs per year. And we have a plan going forward how we're going to manage that into the coming year. And one of our strongest supporters is Furman Windell's at Weta Stamps here in Victoria. And it just so happened that the day we met, the previous day had been the conclusion of one of his 4-week auctions.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling us that I think he said 42 successful bidders were local people who come into his office to pick up their, rather than having them mailed and shipped to they just come into the office and pick them up. So 42 local pickups, and not one of those people were a member of the club.
Mm-hmm.
So I at first I was a little, oh, that's unfortunate. But on the other hand, it's unlikely that these are serious collectors, and you have to kind of respect that they want to continue on their own, doing what they do, and they're not interested in the social aspect of it. They're not necessarily interested in coming out to a club, and I sort of let the disappointment go, because there's nothing you can do about it, and these people will continue to enjoy their hobby, and if there's something that we might offer that would help them, that's great, but obviously having a local dealer is important to them. So I just thought it was an interesting number. And Victoria's not a very big place, but 42 people locally who were fairly serious bidders on his auction.
No, that's a very interesting observation. We're fortunate. We have a bricks and mortar shop in Ottawa, Chris Green Stamps, and we also have Sparks Auctions. And I know Chris quite well, and we've sat down and had some discussions. And I also know the Peter McDonald at Sparks quite well. And one of the things that Sparks has done recently is, the last few years, they occasionally, about 3 or 4 times a year, they hold what they call floor sales, where it's just you only view on the day, and there's no internet bidding. You can only bid if you're in the room, and you have to be able to pay for it and walk out. And those sales, usually there's around 30 to 40 people in attendance, and most of the people there are people from the club, but there are other people there, and whenever I'm there, I try and take the opportunity to talk to them and to find out what their collecting interests are. And some of them, they're serious. Some of them are serious collectors. Others, they're just collectors. They just don't have time to, participate in club activities, or Thursday nights are not good for them. The other thing I've been doing is I've been sort of talking to the Oxfam program as well here in Ottawa, and they've been coming into the club twice in the past year, bringing material in for our members to look at, but also feeding back to them and let them know that, there is an active club here, in Ottawa, that if they come across people, point them in our direction, point them to our website. It's when I used to work with the nonprofit, it was network, network, network. And I find with the club, you've got a network, network, network. So I can definitely really relate to what you're saying. Okay, other questions?
Tim, congratulations on the OPS being an organization since 1891. That is absolutely fantastic, and you should be congratulated to you and your members, past, present, and future. Great presentation. I wanted to comment on the what to do when you inherit stamps. Here at the Kitchener-Waterloo Philatelic Society, and we will be 90 years next year, 90 years young. We receive approximately 2 to 3 requests per month of residents that have inherited stamps, or they collected stamps when they were younger, and they want to know what to do with them, or they'd like to sell them. And in some cases, they would like to use the money to buy land and build a home, which isn't possible. And generally, I have been the person to go to visit residents in their homes or at a mutual location like a community center or library. Libraries are great because they have the Scott catalogs there, so it's a good opportunity for to demonstrate what they may have in their collection. I found that when a person wants to have an evaluation of how much is this particular collection worth, I think that becomes a bit of a challenge for I think for all the clubs. We may look for certain stamps in the collections that they have, and in a lot of cases, we do receive the collection as a donation. My first priority is to see if I can engage them into staying as a collector, or since they've had their collection passed down from their father, to keep that family history in place and build on it, or perhaps have their kids get involved. I was at a home one time, and the person who had their father's collection had a plethora of military mailings, POW letters with the letters in the envelope. I mean, it was fantastic. But my suggestion was to get their kids together, and so that they could learn about what their grandparents did during the war. And so I received feedback from that they really enjoyed that opportunity. I wonder if is there any way that you when you receive a collection, does the donor receive any kind of just receipt or acknowledgement that the club has received the product to use for club activities?
Yeah, that's we basically have we operate in a very similar manner. I sort of picked up the reins on this particular issue when I became president, so I'm still sort of feeling my way. We have a couple of members who will visit people to look at their collections. I'm not one of them. my own feeling is, and I've sort of said it to, I've told the people that do, that we must, if we're given a collection, we must acknowledge that it's been received. And if we are going to receive a donation, I believe that we must tell people what it's going to be, what's going to happen to it. And that's one of the reasons I think on one of my slides, I say, if you give it to us, we are either going to use it to raise funds for club activities and the promotion of the hobby, or it's going to be broken down basically into stamp packages for something like the youth booth. Most of the material that we're given is basically, it's essentially on paper or off paper kiloware. Or we will be given, an album, and you take one look at it, and it's like, there's not much I can do with this. So it will basically go into the youth booth sort of donation material. We have been given in the past year a number of collections. We had a member that passed away, and in his will he asked for his collection to be donated to the club and sold, with the funds coming back to the club to be used for our activities. So in answer, what I'm trying to do is, if somebody approaches us, what can I do with the collection? I can give them some opportunities. I can give them some options. Either there are a number of dealers that they could approach. There's a number of dealers that I would not recommend. And it's not that because the dealers are dishonest, it's because the dealers don't deal in that type of material, is the simple fact. And I'm sort of trying to cultivate some dealers who will look at what I call the less higher end material. Because what's happened in a number of occasions, somebody's gone to a dealer, they've shown the material, the dealer's not interested, they go to another one, and then they come and see us. And we're all telling them exactly the same thing, but they don't believe us.
Yeah, this stamp is 100 years old. It must be worth thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and we hear that all the time.
We are here in Victoria. We have sort of a bit of a tripod of places, of organizations. We've got the club itself, and we recently overhauled our website, and I also created a page that says, what should I do with this old collection? Because we were getting many emails per week, per month, just asking, what do I do? Mm-hmm. That page is all consistently in the top 4 of our web traffic hits per week, per month. The other, so that's one leg of the tripod. The second leg of the tripod is the dealers I was just talking about, and we work quite closely with them. And the third leg of the tripod is the Wellburn Foundation, which you may or may not have heard of, which was set up, the Gerald Wellburn Philatelic Foundation, which was created by a legacy 25 odd years ago when Jerry Wellburn passed away, and he left funds for the creation of a foundation in his name. And it has become a repository for the donations. Mm-hmm. So basically what we do in our webpage is first of all, refer people to the dealers, and we give them contact information. And once they've learned, or if they already know that this collection is not of any great value, then we refer them to Wellburn. And we have a system there, Wellburn, and there's a ton of material coming into Wellburn. I'll tell you, they're just, Bill Bartlett is the guy who kind of manages it for the foundation, and he is consistently picking up material all over town. So between those 3 parts of our structure, if you like, people have been selling material to dealers, and if it's not of any value, then it's going to Wellburn, and eventually finds its way to kids, to other sort of fundraising activities through auctions and things like that. So we're very fortunate to have Wellburn that takes that up. So the bottom line is that the club itself doesn't have to deal with any of this material. So, oh, I think I have, oh, hello, I'm in the middle of a call. It's my granddaughter coming to visit. Hello, I'll be out in a few minutes.
Ask her if she'd like to join the club.
Yes.
Well, she's just about 5 years old. So
That's perfect.
thank you very much. Oh, she's bringing me a flower here. Thank you.
Oh, that's nice.
Remember twice.
There you go. Well, anyway, so I think she's also trying to remind me that it's just about supper time here in Victoria, so I probably should think about signing off.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So no, I mean that's really interesting. I'm sort of, I'm going to look into that a little bit more, but you know, at the moment, the way the club is structured, we are happy to accept donations and we have a way of processing them. What I do when I contact people is I also say, if you don't want to donate to us, you can donate to a local charity. And if you are going to donate, I would suggest you consider the Oxfam stamp program because they know what they're dealing. They've got a pretty good idea what they're given. I mean, it's not like you know, a charity shop where it goes in and you see it in the window for some extortionate amount of money because they don't know what's in there. You know, it's 100 years old, so it's got to be valuable. A number of our members do actually volunteer with the stamp program, so you know, it's one of the way of giving people options.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Tim. I'm taking a lot, excuse me, I'm taking a lot away from this meeting tonight for our local club. I'm here representing the philatelic specialists, but our Berry Club, we got a whole bunch of wannabe dealers. If we get a donation, they want to catalog every stamp that comes in, which is complete nonsense. I'm going to take this back. I wish more of them would have had the opportunity to listen to your talk. All the input from the other members here was very valuable, and I've got something to take away and present to them. Thank you.
Two things, Greg. I sent Greg a copy of my presentation. Greg, if you'd like to send it out to people,
Sure.
You're welcome to do that. The other thing I can mention is about 3 years ago, we started something called a garage sale, which we hold once a year in late November. And basically, we give members an opportunity to bring in whatever they want of a philatelic nature, and we will give them a table or a half table, and they can try selling it. And quite a lot of members have brought in stuff and said, I haven't been able to sell anything. And it's quite an interesting experience for them because they realize that selling stuff is actually quite difficult.
Yeah.
But it's a very popular event.
We started what we call a buy it now table at our regular club meetings. Basically, it's a few card tables set up at the back of the room. If you've got some stuff that you want to try to sell, you just basically, it's on the honor system. You price it out what you want for it. There's a little jar there to put the money in, and the stuff is all $1 to $5. Nothing of any particular. But people do. Their stuff is changing hands. You're not going to pay off your mortgage by what you sell there. But it's a way for people to move stuff along that they don't want, and it's been. I'd like to see it grow a little bit more in popularity, but it certainly is something we're trying to push along here.
Yeah, no. We hold club auctions 5 or 6 times a year, where members can put stuff in, and basically 60% of the material that's sold sells for under $5, and 80% sells for under $10. So that gives you an idea of the type of material that's moving. The last auction we had, which was a couple of weeks ago, we sold about $700 worth of material, and the club will take a percentage of that to raise funds. The auction before that, we raised over $1,000 in terms of, well, there was $1,000 worth of sales. But if you look at 60% of that is selling for under $5, It tells
Wow.
you a lot about the type of material that's popular. That's what people want. And it's, to be honest, it's not worth cataloging every single stamp for that type of material.
What percentage of postal historians do you have in the OPS?
We have some, but it's pretty small.
Okay.
We probably have around 10%. I'm going to say around 10 or 15 with interest. There's probably 10 or 15 members that have interest in postal history.
Okay, thank you.
So we have the membership covers pretty much every aspect. As I mentioned before, the vast majority of our members, their main interest is either Canada and or the US. We have a lot of the members have a second country. A lot of members actually collect topicals or a topical subject, but they won't actually admit it. And we started a topical study group about 3 years ago. And to be honest, it's slowly gaining traction as people admit that they actually collect bicycles or they collect, fish or something like that. But,
Good.
and there's actually a lot of interest out there in that type of stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah, for certain.
Tim,
The reason I asked about the postal history
Yeah.
collectors, our Berry Club is the same way. We've got a membership of about 50, and there's only 2 people that are into postal history.
Mhm.
The rest of them are basically buying stamps to stick them in their album and walk away.
Mhm.
Al, you were going to ask something.
Thanks, Greg. Tim, I was just wondering if your club has a constitution or a terms of reference, and with that, your executive, do you follow that constitution to have elections, and are people stepping up to fill those spots?
Okay, that's a very good question. Yes, we do have a constitution. It was updated, I think, about 3 years ago, and I think a copy can be found on our website. We do hold elections every year. The vice president, the president are 2-year positions. The other positions like treasurer and secretary are basically people who want to do the job, and usually they are re-elected automatically every year. We haven't had a huge changeover in the executive. We have a number of members at large who look after, for example, the Youth Booth Initiative. We have a member who is also tied in with the organization of ORPEX. So we get some feedback from the ORPEX organizing committee. We have a member who deals with membership issues. I think our executive is I think we actually have 9 members on the executive, which is actually, to be honest, a little unwieldy. It's a little bit too big, but it works. And in terms of finding new people, yeah. The only position that really comes up is the position of vice president every 2 years. And we've been fortunate to fill those positions in the last 6 years that I've been with the club. We actually have had a female member who was vice president, and we actually had the first female member of the club. The past president was actually female, and that was actually that was actually fantastic. And in over 100 years, we've only had 1 female president.
Excellent, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Tim, very much for a really engaging evening, and picking up on what Bob said. not only have we enjoyed it, but I know that the people who will view this at a later date will get a great deal out of it. And it's so wonderful to know that the OPS is such a dynamic organization. And as somebody who really believes that to grow the hobby, we have to get outside of our own walls.
Yes.
I just thank you and all your members for all the things that you're doing. So,
Thank
and
you.
for those of you that are watching this or who have missed it, you can find information, or who are watching it later on, you can find information on both the OPS and also the RPSC on the slide at the end of this video. And if we have anything we can do for you, please let us know. Okay. And thanks everybody for coming tonight.
Thank
Fantastic.
you.
And
Thank you.
if anybody would like to email me or has questions, they can email me directly.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
I'll include Tim's email in the slides that I'll be sending out. So
Okay.
yeah, please do. All right.
Fantastic.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
then.
you.
Have a great evening.